Let me begin the session for today. Good afternoon to all attending from Nepal, and of course, good morning to Benoit and our colleague joining from Paris. It is my pleasure to welcome you all for Adstock Nepal presents Brandsutra talk session powered by Vianet, a webinar on behavior change communication with Benoit de Fleurian. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. It's still
More or less.
a challenge, it's still a challenge even after knowing you for a couple of years now. Adstock Nepal is a premium digital magazine which explores the advertising, branding, marketing industry of Nepal. This webinar is being hosted in partnership with Brandsutra, the platform for learning initiated by me since my book in the same name was published in 2015. Thanks to Vianet for supporting the event. Vianet, as we know, is a leading internet and TV service provider in Nepal. It is my pleasure to welcome my friend Benoit de Fleurian for the webinar on behavior change communication. I've known him for a couple of years as I had an opportunity to work with him in same team for an important project, and in the process also learn from him. During the process, he has always inspired me with unconventional ideas and the core behavior science approaches led with powerful creative thinking. A veteran of Ogilvy, Paris, where he held the position of managing director between 2006 to 2014, and together with his creative partner Chris, he accelerated the digital shift for the agency, developing celebrated campaigns for clients including IBM, Coke Zero, and Google. Under his leadership, Paris consolidated its position as the third hub of Ogilvy network, winning global assignment for Coke Zero, Dove Hair, Duracells, among others, and entered the top 10 most creative agency in the world. His tenure as a MD accumulated in 18 Lions and the Grand Prix at Cannes Lion 2013. I envy you for that, Benoit. And Agency of the Year at the Wavy Award 2013 and Cannes Lion Third European Agency of the Decade. Currently, he is working as a head of behavior science practice in Ogilvy Consulting, Paris. Benoit has worked on wide diversity of sectors for brands such as Nestle, Dove, Sony PlayStation, Kodak, Perrier, Ford, Disney, Google, many others. In 2018, Benoit was named Chief Strategy Officer with a specific mission to transform Ogilvy in France from multiple export operation to an integrated agency. After an executive program at Harvard in behavior economics, he became consulting principal with Ogilvy Consulting and launched the behavior science practices in Paris, a bespoke team dedicated to developing and execution of behavior change interventions across multiple sectors, driven by the core belief that the true potential of behavior science can only be realized with powerful creative thinking. The unique approach has reduced uncivil behaviors in French railway stations, discouraged underage gambling, and encouraged caution among the tram crossing in France. The biggest behavior change Benoit and his team have been trying to solve for the past 3 years come from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The mission is to significantly contribute to the reduced malnutrition in Nepal. The ambition is to develop a genuinely innovative new model to transform attitude and behavior to nutrition nationwide while simultaneously making nutritious product affordable, accessible, and appealing. So he has been traveling to Nepal for last 3 years. We have planned the session today where Benoit will do the presentation in the beginning, which is expected to take around 30 minutes time. followed by interaction where we can ask him questions related to the topics and his experiences. We recommend you to write your questions in the chat box and try to read out the queries to him. Benoit, welcome to Brandsutra Talk session once again. It is such an honor to have you with us today. We all are looking forward to your session on behavior change communication and, of course, learn from your experiences. Over to you, Benoit.
Thanks a lot, Ujaya, and thank you for having me with you all today. You know, 1 year ago exactly, on the same day, the January 27, I was in Kathmandu. It was with you and your team, and it's the last trip that I did since COVID started. So it's really a real pleasure to be with you, even if it's at distance. And it's also a pleasure because, as Ujaya said, I met behavioral science a few years ago, and since I met behavioral science, I really think that it is a very powerful tool to use for marketeers, for NGOs, for governments to really try to change the behaviors of their consumers, their citizens, or their employees. And I'm really happy each time I have an opportunity to try to preach on the application of behavioral sciences. So maybe we should start the. Can you start sharing your screen, Ujaya,
Sure.
so that we have a presentation? It might be a bit longer than 30 minutes. Let's see, because I'm used to talk a lot, so I will try to finish at least in 45 minutes. So the presentation is titled "The Power of Behavioral Science" because there is something which is so behavioral science is a lot in many conversations around the world, but in fact when you try to see see real applications of behavioral science in the real life. So whether it is by government or by companies, it's more rare. And in fact, it's a discipline that probably we talk more than we act. And I think when people realize the power of behavioral science, and in fact, this presentation, I will try to make it as tangible as possible. So there are lots of examples, and I will really try to convince you with examples that you should use more the power of behavioral science, because it can really help you to reach your objectives in a great manner. So if we go to the next chart, Ujaya, I will start with a very brief theory of behavioral science. So you should know that there are two behavioral economists in the recent years that have obtained the Nobel Prize in Sweden, and the Nobel Prize of Economy, which is quite rare for psychologists to have the Nobel Prize of Economy. The first one is called Daniel Kahneman. He's still really one of the biggest name in behavioral economics, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2002. And he told us about the two brains that we have in our heads. There is a system 1 and there is a system 2. And the second Nobel Prize winner, if you go to next chart, Ujaya, who is called Richard Thaler, he has given a name to those two brains, and which is really a great name because it really helps to understand how we are functioning in our heads. So system 1 is in fact the brain of Homer Simpson, and system 2 is the brain of Captain Spock. So you should imagine that in your head you have a Homer Simpson and a Captain Spock, and both of them are taking decisions on a daily, every day. And Homer Simpson, as you can think, he is really a brain which works on automatisms. You don't control Homer Simpson. He takes decisions, you don't even know what decisions he is taking. He's very emotional. He goes very quickly. He's fast. He's unconscious. He works on instinct. he is biased and he hates effort. So he doesn't think that thinking is something you should spend time on. Captain Spock is totally different. He is reflective. He is controlled. So you know what he really knows what he's deciding. He likes effort and he knows that there is no good decision that is not taken without an effort. He takes the time, so he is slow. He is very cautious. He is explicit. He follows rules. So it's really two totally different brains that you have in your brain. If we go to next chart, maybe you'll be surprised because in fact, Homer is making much more decisions than Captain Spock on a daily basis. So we are, the scientists, estimate that 95% of our decisions daily are taken by System 1 by Homer Simpsons. So that means that we work, all of us, when we decide something, when we have we decide to adopt a certain behavior, we are really driven by our emotions, by cognitive shortcuts, and not by logic or by really deep reflection. So there is something which is great with behavioral science, which is that we have tons of material from the academic world. So you have lots of psychologists, economists around the world who have really done a lot of experiments during the last 50 years. So I will show you one experiment which is very famous. It's called the Ash experiment. So it's very vintage because it was done in the 60s. So it adds a bit of charm to the video. But I let you look at the video. You will see it's quite striking. Ujaya, if you can play the video. Yeah.
The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example,
the actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1. 2.
1. Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3. 3. 3.
3.
3.
The Ash experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group. Even if we don't believe what people are saying, we'll still go along.
1. 1. 1. 1.
Group dynamics is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology.
1. 1.
So you see in that Ash experiment, clearly it's not Captain Spock who is answering, it's Homer Simpson. And Homer Simpson prefers to be, he is very social, Homer, he likes his friend, and he prefers to go with the group rather than to believe its own rationality. So what we are doing, and this is really our job at the behavioral science practice of Ogilvy, what we try to do is to play with all the biases, the shortcuts that Homer is taking to make decisions and to adopt behaviors. Again, when you hear the academic world, they have numbered 175 biases, shortcuts that Homer is taking to make those decisions. And what we try to do is to play with those biases to inspire insights and strategies and creative interventions that will really have a big chance to change behaviors. On the next chart, we have a tool which is quite famous. So it's a tool which is called Mindspace, Ujaya. And this is a tool that has been developed by one of the very first intervention agency, which is called the BIT. So it's a British agency. They are now international, and they are probably the biggest agency in terms of behavior change. And they were developed when David Cameron, who was a young prime minister in the UK, really embarked on behavioral science. And he thought this could be a great way to really improve the effectiveness of the policies of the British government. So we had the BIT, and each time he was passing a law, he had a problem to solve, etc., he was asking to the BIT if they could come with non-conventional solutions, interventions, to help on the effectiveness of the policies. And those guys have developed a tool which it's not the only tool. There are lots of tools in behavioral science, but that one is quite interesting when you are in the business of applying behavioral science to real life problems. And basically what this tool does is that there is behind each letter of Mindspace one psychological lever. And basically, behind those 9 psychological levers, you have the 175 biases and shortcuts that are regrouped behind those 9 levers. So each letter is one lever. So messenger, incentive, norms, default, salience, priming, affect, commitment, and ego. And all of them are really at work in action when we are taking decisions. And what I will do during this presentation, I will take each letter of Mindspace one after the other, and I will give you an example so that you really understand how this lever works and how it can really powerfully impact on our actions and behaviors. So let's start with the M, so M for messenger. And you all know placebo. It's one of the most incredible proof of the power of behavioral science. So placebo, it's medicine without any active ingredients in it. And we always use in research when we are researching a new medicine, we always compare the medicine with a placebo to really avoid to be biased by the psychological effects of getting a medicine. What is interesting, and I'm pretty sure that you don't know that number, is that more than 50% of German general practitioners are used to prescribe placebo to their patients. So you have more than half of the German doctors who regularly give to their patients, who tell them they are sick, they have an ache, etc. They give them placebo to treat them. And in fact, there are 2 particular illnesses where placebos are great. It's when you are suffering from upset stomachs. In those cases, 59% of the patients who are suffering from an upset stomach can be cured by a placebo. So everything is in the head, not in the intestine or the stomach. More important, in the cases of depression, we have realized that 1/3 of the patients suffering from depression can be cured with a placebo. The placebo will be as effective as an antidepressant. So it shows how much powerful the mind is, the power of the mind, and if you give to a placebo to Homer Simpson, it can be cured. And all that, why? Because there is a messenger effect. The messenger is a doctor in a white coat, and you believe the doctor knows a lot about how your body works. So if the doctor gives you a medicine, even if it's a placebo, you're convinced, you're Homer Simpson convinced that it will work, and then you will be cured. So messenger is really something very important in behavioral economics. We are heavily influenced by who communicates the information to us. And those guys, if you have the right messengers, they can really convince you to adopt a new behavior. Let's go to the I, which is called incentive. And let's start to watch a video.
In Cambodia, half the population is severely anemic because their diet of fish and rice contains very little iron. Iron deficiency is the cause of many health problems and pregnancy complications, like premature births and miscarriages and even deaths. Iron pills are available but are far too expensive, so we needed to find a cost-effective solution. That's when we knew this had the power to change it all. We worked out that cooking with a piece of iron for 10 minutes could provide a family with up to 75% of their daily iron intake. The challenge was getting them to use it. They did, but just not for cooking. So we had to dig deeper if we wanted to help. And we found this, a cultural symbol of hope and good luck. The lucky iron fish. And the community has embraced it. Our team has been going out educating, promoting, and encouraging more families to use the iron fish. And the results have been life-changing. After only 9 months of regular medical trials and testing, we have seen a 50% drop in iron deficiencies and helped 54,800 people feel healthier and happier. The best part is, this is a sustainable solution, made from recycled material that undergoes strict quality control tests, handmade and packaged by the local community. The project provides hundreds of jobs along the way.
And recently it received the stamp of approval from former U.S. President Bill Clinton.
The Lucky Iron Fish is now a registered company for good, giving us the power to help millions of families around the world. Let's put a fish in every pot.
So there is, here we are talking about incentives, and incentives, it's an obvious lever to convince Homer to adopt a behavior. So incentive basically is that we are influenced by the gains or the loss that are associated with a certain behavior. But what is interesting is that the perception of the gain or the perception of the loss is very different for Homer Simpsons, and you can really maximize the perception of the gain to or the perception of the loss in some cases to really drive Homer to take decisions. Here it's a very nice example. You give an iron ingot to families, they will not use it. They will use it maybe once, twice, but they will not use it on the long term. Why? Because it's the same benefit at the end of the day. It's really providing iron supplements to the family, and they know that the family needs iron and suffers from iron deficiencies. But it's not enough. It's just rational, and it doesn't really stick in the brain. When you form the ingot in the shape of a lucky fish, so a fish which is really bringing luck to the family, suddenly everything connects. And you, each time that the mother is cooking with the lucky iron fish, she thinks she is really bringing good luck to the whole family. And the shape of the ingot is really, even if it seems quite anecdotal, in fact, it makes all the difference between using an iron ingot once or twice a week or using it every day. So you need to play with incentives, and when we really maximize the perceptions of the win, it's really a way to make Homer adopt the behavior. One quick word on losses. In fact, as human beings, we love to win, but we hate much more to lose something. In fact, when you talk to scientists, they have estimated that you hate to lose twice as much as you love to win. So for instance, it's the same thing to lose $1 or to win $2, to gain $2. And so making people think that they can lose something by not adopting a behavior can be quite powerful. And this is something that we work with from time to time. The next letter is N, like norms, like social norms. So remember the video that we just watched, the power of what the others around us are doing. We are like sheep. We conform to the group. We hate to be different from the rest of the group. We are social animals. We are really very influenced by what the others do. So each time you can really work on really showing that there is an habit which has been formed in the population. Each time you can tell to people, other people like you are doing that thing or that other thing, it's quite powerful to bring people to adopt new behaviors. So this is why you often see in some advertising campaigns 85% of the people have already done that. It's why it's so important at the moment while we are starting to vaccinate against COVID, to show that you have big numbers of people who have agreed to be vaccinated, and everything is safe and they are happy. So this is very important because it's a very strong way to convince people to adopt a new behavior. So let's go to the next letter, which is D for default. And again, let's start with a video. Ujaya, I'm not sure we can hear the sound. Ujaya?
This simple innovation got featured in over 70 newspapers. It generated a reach of 4.3 million on Twitter and 3.2 million on Facebook in just 4 days. This led to a huge demand for the chalk sticks from schools and NGOs. Its food-grade safety certification got us our biggest prize, Akshay Patra, the world's largest provider of school midday meals, approached us to distribute these chalks to more than 1 million children every day. We are now working hand in hand with schools and NGOs to provide these chalk sticks for free. Kids' health will now be in good hands, their own.
So let
Was there a problem, Benoit?
Sorry?
Was there a problem with the sound?
Yes, I think. At least in France, yes. So
Okay.
I don't know if it was the same in Nepal, but I suppose. So, but it's not a problem. I will explain. So basically, there is a big problem, and this is a case from our Ogilvy cousins in India. The problem with kids is that they wash their hands, before to have lunch, but they don't use soap. It's not in their habit. And of course, if you don't use soap, you don't kill all the bacteria that you have on the hands, and it can cause illnesses later. So what we did, it's to put soap in chalk stick. So the kids are using the chalk stick in the course of the morning when they are studying, etc. And when they are going to wash their hands with water, they have lots of dust of chalk, but they have also powder of soap. And so when they wash their hands, automatically, by default, they are using soap. And so we kill all the bacteria that are responsible for gastrointestinal illnesses. So this is a great illustration of the default level, which is, in fact, we go with the flow. When something is preset, when something is already almost decided, you just adopt the behavior that is done by default, and you don't think, you adopt the behavior. And this is very powerful, because it's something where when you have almost 100% success rate. So you go to a school, you give the chalk sticks to the children. Probably before the chalk stick, you have maybe 5% of the kids who are washing their hands with soap. At the end of the intervention, you have 100% of the kids every day that are washing their hands with soap. So this is very powerful. This is a lever that we use usually in organ donation, and it's very powerful lever. It's not easy to use because it's quite rare, the occasions, the opportunities when we can really use a default lever, but when you can, it's very effective. Next letter is S, and S is for saliency. And it's another very basic thing. Again, we are talking to Homer Simpson. So Homer Simpson, when he sees something around him, he changes behaviors. For example, he sees that there are lots of red posters of Coca-Cola around him. He goes to a cafe, there are again red, I don't know, umbrellas, there are ashtrays, everything is red, and he goes to the guy and he's asking for a Coke. So according to what you noticed around you, it can really shape your behaviors quite powerfully. Here, it's a very nice example from Nivea in Brazil. And it's about sunscreen. So they try to really educate people to put more sunscreen and to really try to pay attention to the damage of sun, especially on the kids. The big problem that we have is that when you want to tell someone to put sunscreen, more sunscreen on a kid, it's difficult because in fact you realize too late that your kid has been burned. So they produce those little dolls, so boys and girls, of course, and the doll is used by the kid to play on the beach, but it has a specific property, is that it gets burned live. So when he has too much sun, it turns red. So you realize at the right moment when you need to stop going to the sun or put sun cream. And this is very, very effective, because in fact, when you see something, suddenly you react. So it's a powerful example of how to use salience to really drive people to take a new behavior. So salience is very basic lever, but it's quite a powerful one. So we need to see, to understand, to find solutions, to find ideas. How can I make my brand, my product, the behavior I want people to adopt more salient in their life? It needs to be more relevant, more noticeable. It needs really to stand out from the crowd. And then suddenly you have much more chances that your citizens or your consumers will adopt a new behavior. The next letter is P for priming. And priming it's something that you remember. Homer, sometimes he takes decisions. He doesn't even realize why the reason why he took the decision. So sometimes the process is totally unconscious. This is a famous academic examples of what priming can be. You take a jail, and it's a military jail in the US. So with people who are really tough guys. You repaint the jail. You paint it in a very particular pink, which is famous. It's called the Baker-Miller pink, and Baker and Millers are psychologists. And it's a pink that really softens the ambience. It makes people feel nicer to each other, more generous, etc. And they proved by repainting the jail that they had much less incidents than before. So it's a real impact on the psychology of the prisoners. Another example, you play in a supermarket French music, people will buy French wines, also because they are the best wines in the world. But if you play the day after, you play German music, people will start to buy German wines. And when we ask them, why did you buy this brand of German wine? They don't know. So really unconscious can be quite effective. It's more complicated to use because it's really you need to have a good knowledge of how the brain works to really play with unconscious cues, but it can be effective. Remember, Homer loves emotion. And he tends to take decisions really just based on emotional reactions. You put the smell of a donut around, and for sure Homer will go straight to the bakery and he will ask for a dozen of donuts. So this is an example that we did with Nestle, and it's a moment. There is a moment in people's life which is very, very important. It's when you are between 2 and 4 and 5, and you are discovering for the first time the taste of vegetables. If you start to like carrots, cauliflower, broccolis, etc., at that age, you will like and love those vegetables for your life, and you will be really a great vegetable eater. If you don't acquire that taste, probably it will also last for your life. So you will never be a great vegetable lover, and you will tend to eat not to benefit from all the nutritional benefits of vegetables. So it's very important at that age to invest a bit of money and a bit of time. And the other thing that we know is that if you succeed in making your kid trying between 7 and 10 times a new ingredient, a new vegetable, you know that at the end of the day, he will like the taste. He will recognize it. He will admit it, and it will be and the battle will be won. But sometimes it's difficult to present to a kid 7 times in 1 week the same vegetable that he really doesn't like. So we invented those plates that we call story plates. For instance, on the bottom right, there is a special plate for cauliflowers. It's not cauliflowers anymore, so it's there is a 3D decor, and it's in the shape of a plane, and it's blue like the sky. And so suddenly the cauliflowers are not cauliflowers anymore, they are clouds. And if the kid doesn't eat the clouds, it will be very complicated for the pilot of the plane to find his way. So you can, and so those plates were coming with lots of stories so that parents can use to really play with the emotions of the kid. And suddenly the kid will be tended to eat, to try, and to like much more the vegetables, just because emotionally speaking, it will be much more rewarding, exciting, entertaining for him. So affect is a powerful lever too. We are coming to the last 2 letters of Mindspace. The next one is commitment, and we'll start with a video.
Now
Now, if you're heading to the Pacific island of Palau, you'll be signing up to a new pledge.
Human impact on Earth's environment is one of the biggest challenges facing the world today. The small island nation of Palau was feeling these impacts acutely. Tourists were damaging reefs, littering oceans and poaching protected species. But how could a small local population with limited resources police the high volume of visitors? What if we made the tourists police themselves? Introducing the Palau Pledge, the first of its kind immigration policy for good. All visitors now need to sign an environmental pledge to gain admittance into Palau. Stamped into the passport of international arrivals, the pledge is a formal promise to Palau's children.
Children of Palau,
I take this pledge.
preserve and protect your beautiful and unique island home.
To implement this policy, government, the tourist industry and citizens were brought together. A new visa entry stamp was designed and issued in multiple languages. And immigration laws were permanently changed.
The joy that comes with the pledge is the recognition that, hey, I can make a difference.
But we didn't stop at the passport stamp. We redesigned the tourism experience via a website, an in-flight film, a passport insert, local education, business accreditation, signage, penalties, and collateral. Launched at the UN, the Palau Pledge has been praised by international leaders and groups. Influencers helped inspire people to take the pledge online in solidarity with Palau.
Are you already seeing tourists behaving differently?
The awareness level is very high.
Leonardo DiCaprio has been quick to endorse the pledge. The reaction on social media has been widespread.
The Palau Pledge has raised global awareness of the responsibility this generation has for the next. But its biggest impact is local, in Palau.
I hope my children can see the beautiful place as I see today.
Benoit, you are mute. I don't know. We cannot hear you.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful, very creative example of the power of commitment. It's very simple. You know, you sign a commitment officially when you are entering the country. For sure, you will try everything you can to respect your commitment. You don't try to betray your commitment, and it's very powerful, especially when it's done so beautifully as in Palau. And the last letter, it's E for ego. It's another very powerful way to make Homer adopt nice behaviors. And look at this funny example from China.
Separating your trash for recycling. It's a simple task, really. Yet people in China are doing it all wrong, even after 20 years of public campaigns. Clearly, something isn't working. Let's try this another way. Maybe if we split the trash into more bins, people would know where to throw what. That doesn't look like paper or food. Yep, still not working. If you won't sort out the trash, let the trash sort you out. Meet the IQ trash cans. Think yourself a genius? You know what to do. Or just a regular person. Well, at least you're civilized. Want to be seen as an idiot? Hey, no one's stopping you. Let's see how that worked out. People thought pretty highly of themselves, didn't they? Not that we're complaining.
人人都想要智商高啊，不想让人家觉得我靠你很笨的。
一定要挑战智商高的。这次活动是在公众场合进行，是用垃圾分类来挑战人的智商，那这就很符合我们心理上说的人的自我分类心理，就会自动的把自己归类到一个好的那一类和高的那一类。
This experiment was shared online to get the conversation started. One simple change to our recycling bins. That was all it took to do what 20 years of public campaigning couldn't. Are you a genius or a moron? You decide.
So very simple illustration that you want to show a good image of yourself in front of everyone, and this is a powerful lever to really make you change your habits. And now I'm going to show you a last video. So it's a case study that our cousins of São Paulo in Brazil did a few years ago. It's on organ donation, which is quite a sensitive subject, and it's really very difficult to change the habits in terms of organ donation. But this is a beautiful idea, and you will see, I will explain to you how the multiple use of different levers is really very, very powerful.
Prometo que os seus olhos vão continuar assistindo o esporte. Que os seus pulmões continuarão respirando pelo esporte.
Prometo que o seu coração sempre baterá pelo esporte. Hoje a maior dificuldade que existe no processo de doação é o sim da família.
Eu sou rubro-negra até depois de morrer, irmão. Minha alma é rubro-negra. Ainda mais que quando eu doar meus órgãos, pô, meu pulmão for pro cara do Náutico, torcedor do Náutico, ele vai respirar o esporte.
A campanha atingiu números impressionantes. 51 mil torcedores se declararam doadores, uma quantidade superior à capacidade da Ilha do Retiro.
A campanha do esporte, eu não tenho dúvida alguma que serviu para que, aumentando a oferta de doadores, a gente conseguisse zerar essa lista, conseguisse realizar o transplante em todos que estávamos precisando.
Uma campanha de doação de órgãos, lançada pelo esporte, está ajudando a salvar a vida de muitos torcedores.
Antes do vídeo, eu tinha passado 18 anos de diabetes e 5 anos fazendo diabetes. E agora você está melhorando, minha visão está voltando aos pouquinhos. Eu renasci, né?
Para muitos anos eu tenho provado o coração da sua mãe. Você pode trazer ela, com certeza. Eu entendo saber que eu entenderia tudo.
So it's a beautiful emotional example that was really incredibly effective in Brazil. But when you take a behavior psychology lens on the case, it's not by chance that they were so effective. In fact, they used almost all the levers of Mindspace. Messengers, they used the football club players to really convince with power about the fans to give their organs. Incentive, there was, and you see in the video, it was such a powerful incentive. I can stay fan of Recife even after I am dead. And it's very powerful, and it's also convincing, like getting more and more supporters to Recife, because even the supporters of competitive clubs can be now transformed into a Recife supporter. Norms, you saw people saw more and more of the fans really becoming organ donors, and so it was another layer to convince people to donate their organs. Science, we don't speak a lot about organ donation in our lives, and this is, by the way, one of the problems of organ donation. Suddenly, it's the big topic of conversations. It's everywhere. You cannot escape it. Affect, when you see Mrs. Josinas wearing the new jersey of Recife, when you see Mrs. Josina's sons, who is really into tears, of course, your emotions are really heavily used to convince people to be an organ donor. Commitment is very, very important. As they say in the video, the family authorizations is always the biggest barrier you have to fight against when you are dealing with organ donation. Here, there is no more barrier, because the family knows what the person wants to do. They have their card. They know that they are organ donors. And last but not least, ego. You cannot be a serious, a good Recife Football Club fan if you are not an organ donor. So it's really the combination of all those levers that really make the interventions a huge success. And I think it's one of the best case in applied behavioral psychology you can find around. So this is what I wanted to tell you today. Sorry, I was a bit longer than expected. So thanks a lot for your attention. I hope you discovered a bit more about the incredible power of behavioral psychology, behavioral science, and you have probably seen that there is one common point to all the cases I showed to you. It's not just that there is behavioral science behind it, but there is lots of creativity also behind it. And I really believe that the combination of the power of science and the power of creativity is the best combination to have successful, effective interventions to make people adopt new behaviors. So thanks a lot. And I'm welcoming your questions. I hope you have lots of questions, because the conversation is important.
Thank you, Benoit, for your lovely session, sharing your thoughts on the power of behavior science, where you spoke and explained us the concept of mind speaks, right, with the relevant examples from different part of the world. It was very insightful for myself, and I'm sure it was, like always helpful for all of us here today in the session. I'm sure there will be questions. We'll be looking out for that. But in the meantime, like I take the privilege of asking you a first question, and let me, like kind of ask you a personal question, because I've been, like quite fascinated with what you have achieved in last 3 decades, in these professions. Therefore, I've been inspired by your career, therefore, where you transform yourself from being an advertising expert, like to now the behavior science consultant. And as a veteran of Ogilvy Paris, working in industry for 3 decades now, can you please share with us about your earlier career in advertising? How did you start, and what were the learnings which inspire you to become a behavior science practitioner?
I think it's quite easy to answer to you. It's the passion of ideas that really animated me during all my career. I was lucky, because when I started my career 30 years ago, I started to work on a brand which is probably the most beautiful French brand you can work on, dream to work on when you are an advertiser. It's Perrier, so the famous mineral water brand. And I was really a lucky guy, because the first campaign I worked on with on Perrier, it won a Grand Prix in Cannes. It was the Lion commercial, which is still very famous in France and I hope in other countries. And in fact, it gave me the love of both strategy and creative ideas. And I think this is really something that animates me since the start. I really genuinely do my work every day to try to find the best, relevant, intelligent, and creative ideas that can really have an impact on people's life. And I think this is what a good advertiser should look for. And then when you try to find the best ideas, and when you are more on the strategic side of the business, your contribution to a great idea is to find strategic angles that are a bit fresh, a bit new, surprising, but which really makes a lot of sense for consumers or citizens. And for that, you need to be curious. You need to read, you need to look at other communications, etc. And it's curiosity who led me to behavioral science, because I thought, wow, first, this is fascinating, and there is a lot of interesting things to discover. But second, there is lots of material here to come up with very interesting strategies, and strategies that are really not only fresh and surprising and new, but they could be really very intelligent to reach more effectiveness in what we do.
Very nice. Let me also, till the time we do not get another, question from the audience, let me also take, ask
I
another
have a question.
Okay.
We're allowed. It's Avash. Hello.
Yeah, we will take a question. Just a minute.
Okay.
Is it Abbas?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I have a second question for Benoit, and then I will leave it to you, Abbas. Okay, as you know that I also run an agency group based in Kathmandu, Benoit. And as I study your career, I see that you have headed Ogilvy Paris as a managing director for almost a decade. And during the process, under your leadership, you've also won numerous prestigious global awards, including Cannes Lions, and managed to make yourself the top 10 creative agencies in the world. I want to know a secret, what are the ingredients that helps you to make yourself a successful agency head, as it can be quite challenging at times, especially during times like this, like COVID, as you have to inspire both your team and manage your portfolio of clients at the same time as head of agency business. How do you balance between client, your agency team, and your life? Are there anything that put you awake at night, Benoit?
Okay, so there are lots of questions in one question, but let's start with the beginning of your question. I think the most important when you are managing an agency is to have a great creative partner. It's really a team which is running an agency, and I've always seen successful agencies. At the top of the agency, you have always a kind of team of a creative guy, a business strategic guy, and they are running the agency together. And I was very lucky to have one of to partner with one of the most brilliant creative partner. He was recently Chief Creative Officer of TBWA globally, worldwide, and he decided to resign to create his own agency. So this is the first thing. The second thing is that you need to have people around you that believe as much as you do about ideas, and that who are really ready to fight for ideas. And so you need to change the culture of the agency. And this is something very important. You need to start with a small group, and progressively it goes bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's true that in 2013, when we won, and we were lucky to win so many Lions in Cannes, it was really great to work in this agency, because everyone was had the same objective in mind, and we were trying really to do our best to come up with the best ideas for our clients and to fight with the ideas, etc. And probably you need also 1, 2, 3 exemplary ideas work in your showcase. And those exemplary ideas, especially internally, you need to see the sweat of the agency. You need to see the battles that we won together to really convince our clients to buy these brave ideas. The battle with the production companies to make the most of the ideas, to fight on the money, etc. So it's a big job, a big daily battle when you really want to preserve the ambition of the ideas that you present. And this is important because if you do that, especially at the managing positions, then everyone in the agency will behave the same. But it's true that it's quite exhausting to do so, and sometimes it's complicated to manage both the balance between the work life and the personal life. And to be very honest, this is why I quitted the managing director position. I usually in my kind of careers, then you continue into other managing positions and you have bigger and bigger teams, etc. I decided, in fact, to go to to become a consultant, and so I decided to continue to be a kind of expert and really to go back to the heart of the core of my work, which is helping, contributing to have the most brilliant, effective ideas for our clients.
Thank you, Benoit. I think Abbas has a question. I'm sorry, Abbas, I have to, I think you can ask a question.
Of course. Hi, Benoit.
Hi, Abbas.
Vijay. So for everyone's benefit, Benoit and we had the pleasure of working together a couple of months ago. So Benoit, my question, I'll turn on my video. So my question is, behaviors, I'm guessing, is driven by a lot of factors, right? You have the culture, the social setup. Sorry, my dogs are barking a lot. Let me just move around. The social setup and a more sensitive aspect of religion, right? That basically derives people's behavior. So if you're, for example, take Peru, for example, or whatever. So there's a certain set of culture and there's a certain set of religion that comes into play. When you come to a different country, certain set of culture, social norms. So yeah. The things that we talked about, the acronym we saw, the multiple things, the pink jail we saw and all that we saw. So do you think this is cross-cutting across all, or are there little nuances we need to take care of? For example, if you're doing a certain campaign in a more let's say more open society, the campaign will take a different shape. Whereas that same campaign, if adapted to a little bit of closed society, will it have to be changed to a certain degree? So that's my question.
Great question. So I think the theory is valid for everyone everywhere in the world. Then the execution really needs to take into account the context of of when, with whom, etc. we intervene. And this is where when we really do very seriously, try to apply very seriously behavioral science, we always start with a phase which is really observing the people, the communities, the situation in which we intervene. And we will try to understand all those nuances that you will that you just approach. We will try to understand the religious context. We will try to understand everything that can really be either a barrier or a lever to help people adopt new behaviors. And so we have, and this is what I'm most interested in. So we have big theory at the moment, and we have lots of brilliant brains for the past 50 or more years who have really developed the theory of how we take decisions, how we adopt behaviors. Now it's our turn, and me, you, all the people attending this webinar, to use the theoretical material and to try to understand how we can best apply it to our situations, to our context, our consumers, to our citizens. And this is where all those nuances exist. So The campaign I showed you on Recife, I don't think it will work at all the same way in Nepal, but the foundations of the campaign, I'm sure they would work.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
I think somebody has raised the hand. Appy Rigby, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Bonjour, Benoit.
Bonjour.
So I had a question because as someone from the creative industry, I would like to know how you come to the point of deciding what the pain point of the audience really is. Because when personally, when I think of ideas, sometimes I tend to go like really off the chart, especially when it comes to marketing services. Products, it's still manageable, but to find the audience's pain points while marketing a service, I personally find it really challenging. So like, is there any secret trick or hack, or did you just learn it along the way?
So yes, there is, and if you are interested into the field of behavioral science, really you should read books. First, because it's very interesting to read. I'm not a big fan of scientific articles, etc. But when it comes to behavioral science, it's rather really very interesting readings to read the authors. So there is lots of material that you can play with, and it can really help you to think a bit differently. Whether you think strategies, whether you think creative ideas, it will give you some levers, some biases, some material really to think a bit differently. But the second thing, as I was saying to Avash, I think if you go deep into your audience, your target audience life, then you can really observe very interesting insights. Let me take an example. We were working with Nestle in Mexico, and we were trying to so the subject was trying to fight against obesity, and especially so to impact on the food behaviors of children. And one behavior which is responsible, one of the behaviors, because it's really multiple factors, but one of the behaviors which is quite responsible for obesity, children obesity, is that the kids eat between 12 and 15 times every day. So they have 12 or 15 occasions of eating in one day, when a French kid, for instance, for example, he would have just 4 occasions, not more than that. So the idea is that if we could reduce by 1, 2, 3, 4 the number of occasions of eating for a child, it could be already a good contribution to reducing childhood obesity. And so we observed the kids, and we went to schools, and we observed during the break, and the guys were able, the children were able to play football and to eat at the same time. So they were playing football, etc., but they would have, for example, a slice of pizza or a sandwich in one hand, and they would eat while playing. So we said, this could be a nice insight. If we want kids to really, when they have a break, to do sports and nothing, or to do something else and nothing, and not have a chance to eat, we should invent an occupation for them, a leisure, an activity, which is making their 2 hands busy. Imagine the Rubik's Cube. You remember the Rubik's Cubes in the 70s, 80s, etc. If you want to play with Rubik's Cube, it's addictive, but you have to use your 2 hands. So we gave a brief to the creative teams how to reinvent an addictive game for kids, but with the constraint, we want the 2 hands of the kids occupied. So it's these kind of things when you are observing, and really observing with a nice brain, fresh brain of a behavioral psychologist, you can really find insight that we are not used to play with in our advertising life.
Okay, Benoit, I see some question in the chat box as well, and I'm going to read out too. There's a question from Diksha Mahat. She's saying, hello, thank you for sharing your insight with us. I enjoyed it. The book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is also on behavior science.
Yes.
Did it influence or contribute to you or your work in any way? That's what
Yes,
she's asking.
of course. It's one of the foundational book of behavioral science. It's written by Daniel Kahneman, who is the first Nobel Prize winner. So it's the first time in the history of the Nobel Prize that a psychologist is winning the Nobel Prize of Economy. So it's really him who brought this idea that we are not homo economicus, we are not rational, we are really emotional people, and we are taking decisions irrationally. So yes, he is a big influencer of the whole discipline and of everything that we try to do at Ogilvy.
Okay, there is another question again from Amit Pradhan. He says, hi, since behavior change takes time, is there any end survey done to study the impact?
Yes. So when we work at Ogilvy, we really try to have an approach which is marrying science and creativity. But we start with science. When I talk about observations, this is ethnographic approaches. We start by reading the scientific literature to understand the brain of the consumers or the citizens and to see what are the biases that are most important in one given behavior. And then, so we have a constant discussion between creative teams and more scientific behavioral strategists. But at the end of every process, we try to measure. And there is a basic thing in applied behavioral science is that you recognize that your consumer or your citizen is irrational. So it's impossible to predict beforehand if your solution will be effective or not. You need, in fact, to prototype your solution and you need to measure it with a very scientific mind. For instance, we worked with the French railways last year, and they briefed us on trying to fight against public uncivilities, and especially about lots of men, French men, who are peeing on the walls of the station. So very basic behavior. So we brought the science, we had an intervention, but we created, after the prototype, we created a sensor, which is, so it's a brand new kind of sensor innovation. It's very simple, in fact. It's the combination of liquid sensor, so you can see if there is a liquid on the wall, and a heat sensor, so you can make the difference between cold liquids, so it's not urine, or warm liquids, which is urine. And so we put the sensors on the walls where we had intervened. We measured before the intervention, after the intervention, and we showed that we reduced by 88% the number of acts of public urination. So in a way, you probably, most of you know the famous example of the fly in the urinals in Schiphol Airport, which is one of the most famous. So we were even more effective than the fly in Schiphol.
Fantastic.
So yes, we need to measure.
Yeah. There's a question of Shekhar as well. He's asking what, according to you, is the more important element in the phase this term mind space, and how can we use these terms in creating a social media campaign?
You never know what will be the most important. You need, this is what is interesting when you are, especially when you are working on a new field. You need to really understand the psychology of your consumers or your citizens, and you need to think about what would be the best strategy for intervening. But there is no magic. If there was a magic answer, it would be too simple.
Yeah. Okay, Benoit, I love your example of the Palau plays,
Yeah.
And let me tell you frankly, I was part of the jury team that decided to give Grand Prix to Palau plays in 2018 at Busan, Korea, during the Adstock in the PSA category. you know. And I know it went on to win numerous prestigious awards in other global forums as well. But what we see in that example is that the government has intervened to make mandatory behavior, as travelers have to stamp and sign on the police, while entering the nation.
Yeah.
Is it mandatory that for any such BCC campaign to be successful, there has to be similar intervention from the government bodies? And if that is important, what are the effective process to get the government advocacy for such campaign? As I believe that could be quite challenging as well.
Yeah. So in fact, it really depends. But when you are into important behavior change, usually you realize that you have lots of stakeholders who have a role to play in really changing the behaviors of, in that case, of the citizens, of the tourists. And so this is part of the preliminary phase of observation, of understanding of the context, of reading the scientific literature, etc. You try to see all the actors that are involved into a decision. And if the government, and usually they have a role to play, especially when we are, of course, talking to citizens, the subject that NGOs are working on. Often the government is very important. Yes, you have to talk to them, and you need to try to involve them in your intervention. But it's, a political leader. It's like a CEO of Unilever or Procter & Gamble. It's like when you present to them great ideas, when you have a great power of conviction, when you have done your homework and you have really great elements to indicate, to convince them that your ideas will be effective, usually they participate to it. So it's not, of course, they are a bit more intimidating. It's a bit more complicated to talk to the president of a country than to, but at the end of the day, and this is also one of my beliefs, is that when you have really very strong ideas, you can convince anyone to buy it.
Right.
And something else on governments, and this is part of the work that we did with you, with Avash and the Gates Foundation in Nepal. There is also, you should also think of a behavior change approach for governments when you are talking to political leaders. Sometimes you have to change. Changing the behavior of the political leaders, it's the prerequisite before to change the behaviors of the citizens. Something that is really important is that they need to put your subjects on top of their agenda. If it's not on the top of their agenda, you can make sure that they will not be involved, etc. And at the end of the day, it will really weaken your effectiveness. So we should also use our psychological science with them, because they are also human beings.
Right, Benoit. I love your explanation on the mind space tools, and I have always been advocating to my clients on the importance of occupying mind space while it comes to brand communications. And even in my book, Brandsutra, I have reinforced the thought that while products are made in factories, brands actually resides in the mind of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And this journey from a physical product in factory to an image or promise or status and a set of responses in the mind of the consumer is all constituted by our brand communications. So would love your thought on the same metaphor for the brand communication, the similar kind of a.
It's very relevant as a metaphor. I think there is Ogilvy is part of WPP, and there is a guy who is called Jeremy Bullmore, who is very well known in the advertising scene. He's a bit old now, but he's still in the advisory board of WPP, and he's really a very strong creative mind in the industry. And there is a quote, it's an old one, which I used to use in my presentation, which is, people build brands like birds build nests.
Okay.
From scraps and straws,
Okay.
we chance upon. So in fact, we are giving lots of cues, signs, elements of information, of communication to consumers. You never know the ones they will pick up to build the brand nest in their mind. But it's the way it works. They have an image of the brand and they pick up from what you give to them. And sometimes it's very small signs that you give. For instance, even I don't know, if you have a problem, you call a company, the voice, the first words of the person answering to you, maybe it's so important in the image building of your brand. So you never know, and so you should always try to communicate in the best way possible with your consumers.
Yeah, fantastic. There's a question from Diksha Mahat. She's asking, what would you consider your most challenging project and one you enjoyed the most?
So it would be the same, because I love challenges. and fundamentally, I'm a strategic planner. And so a strategic planner is happy when he has a really big, complex strategic issue to solve. But I think I would have two examples. The first one was part of the work I referenced on Nestlé. So we tried with Nestlé to create a global movement, which was called United for Healthier Kids, which was a movement really to help parents to change the behavior, the eating behaviors of their children. And so we brought lots of behavioral economics, lots of creativity, lots of nutrition. We worked in a dozen of countries in the world. We had some results, but it's not the big success we expected. And now that we are 5 years, 6 years after the launch, I'm a bit disappointed with the results. But at the same time, there was a huge ambition. There was really great ideas of intervention, great science, great thinking behind it, and I'm sure it will help to build more successful projects later. So that was really 3-4 years of my life, and it was really exciting. And the second one is the one that I'm embarked in Nepal at the moment. So with the Gates Foundation, the project is called Balio Nepal. So maybe some of you have heard of it. We will probably heard more about it because we are about to launch a pilot in Lumbini province. But there is also lots of things that we brought into this project. Again, behavioral science, creativity, strategy, deep understanding of the consumers, trying to play with very different stakeholders, including the government, the food industry, the consumers, the citizens, working with influencers. So there is really a very big ambition behind this project. Again, I'm not sure we will be successful. I hope that we will make a change, a difference in Nepal, but that we will see probably in 20 years' time. But anyway, we have learned so much, and I'm sure we will have progress in the way to use emotions, behavioral science, influence marketing to solve malnutrition in the world.
Thanks. Benoit, thank you for an excellent presentation on the power of behavior science, where you talk about two brains, system 1 and system 2.
Yeah.
And if I understood it correctly, like you have reinforced your thought that the most decisions are made emotionally. Though I believe, and if I'm correct, brains are to be used for rationalization of the process. Can you please elaborate further on this, as I believe this is quite critical?
Yeah. So the point, so of course I talk a lot about Homer Simpson, but really you should, and this is a picture I like to give to people, we should all think of us and of our consumers or the citizens we are talking to with two brains. They really have a Homer Simpson and a Captain Spock in their brain. And in fact, if you want to be successful, you need to engage both brains. activations, in your interventions, in your approach. Sometimes you need to talk to Omer. Sometimes you need to talk to Spock because he has a say. And if he really doesn't believe rationally that what Omer is doing every day makes sense, at a moment he will say to Omer, "Hey, shut up! I'm taking the control." So we need to really, and this is also what I'm fighting for. It's to have complex strategies for changing behaviors. You don't change behaviors just because you have a brilliant idea. It never, maybe it worked one time against 1,000, but it doesn't work like that. So we need to have complex interventions. At the same time, at the end of the day, it needs to be you need to have one very simple, emotional, engaging story, aspirational story to tell to everyone. So this is where it's also our work, and when it makes it complex and exciting, we need to have sophisticated strategies, but at the end of the day, you need to have one single emotional and great story to tell to everyone.
Yeah.
One example, remember when JFK in the early 60s told to the American people, "Let's go to the moon." It was a very, very simple story. He told to everyone, "We can go to the moon, and we choose that because it's difficult, etc." So there was one simple story, but at the same time, there was so much complexity around to make it happen, and it had so much consequences on the American society, etc. It was probably a great behavior change idea.
Right. So I see another question from Prakash Karna. He's saying, "Thank you for the great insights. Most of the examples directly solve the social issues around the world. But beside that, how can we apply the same for the day-to-day use products, the ones that are already in use? Do you need to reestablish the product using this strategy?"
You can work with everything. Yes, you can. There are lots of issues at the moment with sustainable development. So you want people to recycle. So there are tons of questions that really make behavioral science apply to the daily products we are using. In fact, the good question, and this is a question I always ask to my clients, and if they say yes, this is a client for us. If they say no, it's not for us. Do you have a behavior that you want, a consumer behavior that you want to change? Do you want your consumers to use your product differently? Do you want them to use your product in a certain way? And if you say yes to that question, then we can use behavioral psychology. Let me take an example. It's from Unilever. It's the brand of mayonnaise and sauce which is called Hellmann's. So they introduced in Brazil. But in Brazil, you don't eat mayonnaise. So it was a very small brand, and it was just in the cupboard of maybe the high class that have traveled around, etc. And they said, if we want to be big in Brazil, we need to build a habit of consuming regularly mayonnaise with your food. How can we do that? And it's always difficult to create habits, except if you add on an existing habit. So what is the most important popular habit in Brazil when it comes to cooking? It's to cook bistec con cebolas, acebolado. So it's basically the basic beefsteak, but you cook it with onions. And in fact, they augmented the recipe of bistec acebolado by adding mayonnaise. And they created a sauce which was really delicious, which was really improving the favorite taste of Brazilian families. And this is how they entered into the market. And now Hellmann's is really big in Brazil. So it was a nice way to really think in terms of behavioral psychology. How can I make my product usage really very common daily in Brazilian families?
Fantastic, Benoit. As you've been traveling to Nepal often in last 3 years, and I just because it seems that most of the questions are over. Any parting note for the marketeers in Nepal? What are the areas we should improve to do some great advertising work or work that is related to BCC communications as well?
I think I would have 4 advices for you.
Sure.
One which comes from David Ogilvy. David Ogilvy created a culture of divine discontent in his agency.
Okay.
So you are never happy with your idea. It can always be improved. It can be better. It can be more effective, etc. And I think this is something that I don't have a big experience of Nepal, but I think what I felt is that maybe you are happy too quickly about your ideas. You don't challenge enough yourself, etc. You don't challenge your ideas, and I think you would gain into being a bit more discontent about your ideas.
Right.
The second thing is that I think a good agency is an agency who knows how to fight with his clients.
Right.
Felt that there is a culture in Nepal which makes it very difficult when you have a client to disagree with him.
Right.
I think there is a question of bravery. And
Right.
frankly, you need to be brave in advertising. It's not when you have big ideas, often they are a bit complicated to buy. There is a level of risk, etc. And so if you cannot fight, you cannot succeed with big ideas. The third thing would be to really be curious. And this is why it's great to have this webinar today. It's great the spirit that you have in Outreach, because you feel it with everyone. You are really open to discussion. You want to know more. It is great with Adstock. This is really what they are doing, which is opening Nepal to other cultures of advertising, ideas, etc. And I think this is very important. It's the basics of a good advertising agency, of a good advertiser. You need to really have a great advertising culture, a culture of ideas. You need to look at them, think what are the ideas I would have loved to come up with, etc. So there is a culture. But the last advice would be to be authentic to yourself. I found when I had come to Nepal 15 years ago as a tourist, but it's very different to come back and to work with people and to meet really more deeply people. And I felt that you are a beautiful people. You have some particularities which makes that you are quite open. You are generous with other people. You are really open to other opinions, differences. The way, for example, you treat the religions in Nepal, it's incredible. It's the only country where a Muslim and a Buddhist and a Christian can be friends, and there is no problem talking religions together. So there is something which is really, really great. And I think the day you really use all those great human traits of Nepal, I'm sure you can be a great country on the advertising scene. You see, for if you look at the way you do advertising in Britain, in France, in South Africa, in Brazil, it's totally different.
Yeah.
And when there is a great culture of advertising, it's when you really find those deep roots, very authentic ways that you behave in your country. And I would love to see Nepalese culture a bit more in the advertising.
Yes. Thank you, Benoit, for those kind words. And thank you for being with us today and sharing your thoughts on the power of behavior science, where you spoke and explained us the concept of mind space with the relevant examples from different parts of the world. I'll quickly want to summarize our 5 key learnings for today. We are influenced by who communicates the informations. We are influenced by what our action will make us gain or lose. We are strongly influenced by what others do. Our emotional association can powerfully shape our actions, and we act in ways that make us feel better about ourselves. So these are the 5 key learnings I'm taking from this session from today. I'm sure all of us here have also had a lot of learnings from Benoit. Thank you, Benoit, again, Adstock Nepal, Vianet for supporting this event, and all the participants for your enthusiasm. It has been a good learning for all of us today. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be with you all. Thanks a lot.